Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brian Hanley, and welcome to Steelers Almighty, our scouting report edition. Pittsburgh Steelers are hosting the Cleveland Browns this Sunday in a pivotal game. Now, a lot of people might think that it's not pivotal, because the Browns are not very good. They're not going to the playoffs. But 2 weeks ago, the Browns just beat the Steelers. And I've said this all along. If the Steelers want to consider themselves, if we want to consider us real playoff and Super Bowl contenders, you can't get swept by the Cleveland Browns. You just can't. So, with all that in mind, it's crazy to say this, but I think that Sunday is a must win football game. You have to go beat the Cleveland Browns. Again, I'm not saying, obviously, this world is not absolutes other than, you die. Other than that, there's not many absolutes in this world. So, can the Steelers still make a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl if they get swept by the Browns? Yeah, that could potentially happen. Is it likely? No. And should people take us seriously if we can't beat the Browns? I'll be honest with you, no. So I think the Steelers have to win this game. Again, we're up in the division. We're 9-3. There's still, if this one includes 5 games left in the season, so there's still a ton of football left. But to be considered one of the top teams in the AFC, the Steelers got to go out and beat the Cleveland Browns, man, at least once. Just period, end of story. I'm sorry. That just has to happen. So with all that said and done, we're going to break down the matchup this week based on what we've seen and what the Steelers are, what the Browns are. We're going to give you the overview and all that good stuff, and we'll make our prediction at the end. Make sure you stick around. Definitely get into those comments like you guys always do. We love the back and forth, and hit that notification bell so you know exactly when Steelers Almighty content comes out. So without further ado, people, let's get into this. So obviously we know the opponent. It's Cleveland Browns. The game is in Pittsburgh. Not going to be quite as cold. Last couple of games the Steelers have played, it's been pretty cold. Pittsburgh in December, it's going to be in the 50s, man, at kickoff. It's going to be a little breezy, but as of now, anyway, we all know how weather is. It can change at the drop of a dime, but at kickoff, it's supposed to be like 54 degrees, a little bit breezy, but no precipitation, so no snow. Thank goodness, no rain. So for December day in Pittsburgh, it's actually going to be really, really good. And one thing is, this line, Pittsburgh is favored by 6.5. That seems to be about right. We'll get in, like I said, we'll get into all the predictions. Over under on this is 43.5. I think that's a little low, to be honest with you. Look, it's these two teams. Look, I know the Steelers defense is really good. It can potentially be good, but I just think 43.5 might be on the lower side. Vegas, look, man, they know what they're doing. They build those resorts out there, and it isn't for nothing. So, but I do the 6.5. Steelers minus 6.5 seems about right for this one. Moving on. Look, let's get to the personnel. Again, it's not like we played these guys 3 years ago. We played them 2 weeks ago. So we know who they are. Jameis Winston on offense. Look, man, the guy just threw for 497 yards last week against the Denver Broncos, who have a really good defense. Now, technically, Jameis Winston threw for 668 yards and 6 touchdowns. Only 171 of those yards were return yards for the Broncos, and 2 of those touchdowns happened to be for the Broncos. So Jameis put up some numbers, man. But that's kind of what Cleveland has turned into. Look, they don't run the football anymore. They can't run the ball. They've turned to just throwing it. Jerry Jeudy, another weapon. He had 9 catches for 236 and a touchdown last week. He was all over the place. And for being honest, the Steelers had trouble. Now, they didn't give up 400, almost 500 yards passing to Cleveland, but they had trouble when we needed to stop the Browns. We couldn't stop the Browns, and that was troubling, when it came to throwing the football. Winston is dangerous. The one thing that you know about Jameis Winston, he is going to throw you the football. He's just going to do that. Your job, you got to catch it. But the one thing about Jameis Winston, you can't let this guy get on a roll. You can't let him get hot because he can heat up. As much as I call Jameis Winston 30 for 30. Because a year he had 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. That's my nickname for him. But I'm just telling you, the guy can heat up. We've seen it. Last week. I mean, I get it. They were down. It was a throwing game, but 500 yards? Come on, man. I mean, you can't be bad throwing for 500 yards in the National Football League. That just doesn't exist. Now, granted, like I said, he threw 3 interceptions in that game. 2 went back for touchdowns. A third almost went back for a touchdown. But you just can't. I mean, 500 yards is still 500 yards, people. And it wasn't like that Cleveland was down, 4 scores and, they're just playing catch up. That was not the case. That game was a close football game. So the Steelers got to be on their P's and Q's. They got to get after Jerry Jeudy. But I still say, number one, you have to stop the run. Make them one-dimensional. Make Nick Chubb be irrelevant. Stop what they're trying to do on the ground. They did a fairly good job of that against Cleveland the first time. They got to do it again. And if they do it again, I think the Steelers are going to be in good shape. Because like I said, Winston will throw you the ball. You just have to catch it. You just got to catch it. You got to put pressure on them. Their line, their tackles have not been great this year. The Steelers got to try to take advantage of it. Can't come out passive like they did in the first game, where they, as we move on to the defensive side of the ball, and let Myles Garrett wreck the football game. You know what, as far as the defensive players, what they bring to the table. Myles Garrett, for the first half of that Steelers game, dominated the football game. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He just did. We couldn't block him. It's almost like we didn't try to block. We didn't know where he was. We were intimidated. Whatever you want to say, if you're being honest as a Steelers fan, you just got to put it out there, man. Myles Garrett whipped us in that first half. We weren't ready. We looked like a team that had just come off winning a big emotional game on Sunday, had to go on the road and play Thursday against a bad team. We didn't want to be there. Well, in the first half, it looked like it, and Myles Garrett took advantage. We can't let that happen this week, because in the second half, the Steelers did a much better job on Myles Garrett. They got to do the same thing. They can't allow him to wreck the football game. Zach Frazier in this game kind of got a baptism to the National Football League. There were 2 times where Myles Garrett loops around. Zach Frazier doesn't even touch him, and he's getting in the backfield. I'm like, okay, man, now you've seen it. Now you understand what he is. We got to do a good job. Look, they also got Denzel Ward. We know Denzel Ward's a good corner. He just is, man. He's one of the better corners in the National Football League. He doesn't get a ton of pub because he plays in Cleveland and they stink. Let me repeat that. Cleveland stinks, but he is really good. There's no question about that. Grant Delpit, pretty good safety, but the Steelers can take advantage of him because he's not the best in coverage. Good at the line of scrimmage, good in the box, great tackler. But if you can isolate him and get him into coverage, the Steelers got some advantages there. I don't know if Calvin Austin is going to play this week. Things are trending up, and we'll talk about that a little bit, so we'll see. I wouldn't suspect that, but maybe. But Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, anybody we put in the middle of the field, if we can get singled up on Delpit, the Steelers have an advantage in the passing game. So as far as injuries are concerned, it looks like Alex Highsmith is going to play this week. Mike Tomlin came out and basically did everything but say he's going to play this week. And I think that's a good sign. Some of you guys think, hey, hold him out, play him against Philly. I don't know, man. Here's the thing. You can say rest him against Cleveland, and that's fine. But he didn't play against Cleveland last time, and we lost. That's all I'm going to say, people. It's like, I get what you're saying. I understand the sentiment. But I think people really forget how good Alex Highsmith is. I really, because he's been hurt a lot this year. But I think people forget how good he really is. And that would be a mistake. So if he's healthy, you put him on the field. Now, if you're saying, well, he may get hurt again, well, anybody can get hurt on any given play at any time. So you can't just say, well, you're going to get hurt again. If you're healthy enough to play, you got to get out on the football field. I think they play Alex Highsmith this week. Corey Trice, I would hope that he's back this week. But we'll see. We'll see. I think he's in the lineup. Y'all have heard me say it before. I think Corey Trice, when it comes to a technical standpoint, I think he's the best corner that the Steelers have. But he can't be the best corner that the Steelers have because he's never on the field. So If he can be healthy and be on the field, the Steelers, like I said, we got away with one last year in the draft. But if he can't be healthy, then it is what it is, man. And again, the best ability is availability. As far as the Browns, it's kind of the same thing. The line, Jedrick Willis is still, I guess, going to be out. Who knows if he's going to play again? I mean, it sounds like he's kind of fed up with Cleveland anyway, and he's ready to be out of there. But we'll see. We'll see what happens on the injury front. Let's move on to some of these matchups, man. Now, the Steelers defense versus the Browns offense. Now, and if you just go by strictly numbers, the Browns offense isn't going to be one of the best in the league. But we've seen what it's done the last few weeks. Hell, we saw what it did against us 2 weeks ago. You know, they didn't put up a ton of yards, but they did enough to beat us. I know that. So that's when I'm talking about strength versus strength. Can the Steelers defense be that championship defense that we talk about, that everybody seems to rave about? Can they step up and say, okay, Browns, we're choking you off and you're not doing nothing this week? That's kind of what I want to see out of our defense, is get back to that championship level. I know we're playing against really good competition, and it's tough to do that, especially last week against the Bengals. You're not shutting that team down. You're just not. But this is an opportunity. The Steelers can shut down the Browns. So that's what I'm expecting this week, because the Browns offense, for all its faults, it's kind of got it rolling right now. As far as the Steelers' strength versus a Browns' weakness, I mentioned it earlier. The Steelers' defense, their rush defense, is fourth in the league, giving up 90 yards a game. Choke it off to 78 yards a game. Do what you did. I think the Browns only had like 55 against the Steelers last game. That's what needs to happen this game. Choke it off. Make them one-dimensional. Make the Browns one-dimensional, because the Browns don't run the football. They're 30th in the league. They're like 87 yards a game. They're not even trying to run the football, but they can't run it. And this is one of those opportunities where the Steelers, okay, you can't run the football. We're not going to let you run the football. Be one-dimensional. We got to take advantage of that, man. Again, beating the Browns is essential. And the easiest way to do that from the defensive standpoint, make them one-dimensional, get after Jameis Winston, and make him throw you the football, which you know he's going to do. So we got to be able to win that matchup. As far as the Steelers' weakness versus a Browns' strength, look, the Steelers' pass defense, man. Now, granted, I know last week it's tough. You're going against the best wide receiving core, quarterback tandem in the National Football League, in my opinion. Other people might say something else. In my opinion, that's the best. Burrow, Chase, Higgins, that is the best in the league, in my opinion. And the Steelers had their hands full. But it is what it is. We're not facing that this week. I know we've given up some stuff. We're 19th in the league. We give up 220 yards a game. We got to be better against Cleveland, man. And more importantly, get off the field on third down. You know, get off the field on third down, which they did a great job against Cleveland last time. They were 1 for 10 on third down. Steelers did a great job on third down. But then the Browns turned around and were 4 for 4 on fourth down. So it's like, okay, well, you're great on third down, but then you couldn't get off the field because you're 4 for 4 on fourth down, which is horrific. So Steelers got to do a better job of that. Look, I know if you look at the overall statistics of the Browns passing game, they're not going to be one of the top teams in the league, but that basically when they were coming with Deshaun Watson earlier in the year. I mean, the Browns are a totally different passing offense. The last 3 games, they're averaging 357 yards a game. That includes a game against us where I think it was only like 219 yards they had passing. So the Steelers have to get after it. They have to come with it. Tighten up that coverage. Please limit the 2-deep zone. For the love of God, limit. We are terrible when we run a cover 2. The Steelers are terrible. Heck, last week we gave up a 3rd and 21 because we sat back versus playing quarters coverage. We sat back in a 2-deep zone. They ran right down the seam, 33-yard gain on 3rd and 21. We're just not good. I'm not saying that every situation has to be man coverage. It doesn't. But guys got to be better. Got to be better. Can't be just because you're in zone doesn't mean you just give up yardage. It's not what it means, man. It's not what it means. You can still defend in a zone. The Steelers have to be better. Have to be better. So that's a matchup to look for. Like I said, the Browns, 357 over the last 3 games. They're doing some work. They are really doing some work. Steelers, they got to be pretty good when it comes to that. Now let's go to what I believe as far as the outcome here in the matchups. Look, the game is in Pittsburgh. Obviously, we're going to have an advantage. Nobody's coming to Pittsburgh like we go there and dominate their stadium. Now granted, we didn't do that in Cleveland, but we're not going to do that in Cleveland. Cleveland fans are pretty proud. It's their Super Bowl, and they treated it like as such. Steelers fans are going to be all over the place. The weather's not going to be crazy. Advantage Steelers as far as where the game is at. Obviously, we're at home. Coaching, Mike Tomlin's a better coach than Kevin Stefanski. Look, I'm one of those people that don't say Kevin Stefanski's getting fired. There's a lot of people out there that said, oh, this guy's getting fired. I don't think that he is. I really don't. I don't think he's getting fired because their problems are not his fault. Like, Kevin Stefanski didn't say give Deshaun Watson $230 million guaranteed dollars, or maybe he did. And if he did, then yeah, he probably needs to be fired. But I don't think he's getting fired, man. I don't think that all the issues are his fault. Regardless of all of that, Mike Tomlin is a better football coach. The history, we know what the history is. The Steelers have dominated this series, especially since the Browns came back to Cleveland. The Steelers have just dominated this series. But I will say, the Browns, they seem to win a game every year, which is disgusting to me. And they won the game 2 weeks ago that the Steelers should have won. Just the Steelers, we played terrible in the first half, didn't show up, finally get our act together. We have the ball with 5 minutes to go in the game, and we couldn't run out the clock. Hell, I don't even think we ran a minute and a half off the clock, which to me, that was disgusting. Steelers couldn't do it. I was upset by that. We got to be better. We got to be better. But again, the history of this, the Steelers have dominated this series. I think over the last 56 games, the Steelers have only lost 9 of those games. So it's crazy. As far as the roster, the Steelers have a better roster. Top to bottom. Doesn't mean that Cleveland doesn't have good players. They do. But top to bottom, the Steelers have a better roster. When it comes to matchups, the Steelers have the advantage when it comes to matchups in this game too. That's including Myles Garrett. Yes, Myles Garrett he's not going to be the best player on the field because I still believe TJ Watt's the best defender in the world. You're not going to get me off of that till I see something that tells me different. But Myles Garrett's going to have the advantage over anybody that he goes against. Well, doesn't TJ Watt have that same advantage over anybody that he goes against? Then you throw in Alex Highsmith on the other side. That's just the offensive side of the ball. Look, I just think the Steelers have the better matchups there. So, and as far as the outcome, look, I said this at the beginning. The Steelers have to win this football game. There is no doubt in my mind that this is a must-win game. And I know you're going to say, come on, Big B, you're nuts. What do you mean it's a must-win game? There's 5 games left. We're up in the division. But it just goes back to this, man. If the Steelers are going to be taken seriously, and I'm not just talking about the talking heads or anything like that. I'm just talking about real-life football. Fans, players, coaches, just in general, if we're going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers seriously as somebody that can make a Super Bowl, make a deep playoff run, let me say this, you can't get swept by the Cleveland Browns. Now, anything is possible. So yeah, it could happen and the Steelers could go win the Super Bowl. That's possible. But is it likely? No, it's not. So we have to win this football game. Number one, it puts us another half game up on the Ravens in the division because they have a bye week. We need to win. We can't lose. That would be silly. We go win this football game. That's a good thing. Okay, great. Prove that we can beat the Browns. The Browns, Lord have mercy. Just go win. I'm not saying that we have to dominate them and beat them by 3 touchdowns, but make it definitive. Make a definitive statement that, you know what, a couple weeks ago, yeah, they beat us. We gave that one away. We didn't show up in the first half. Second half, we played better, but we gave the game away. Go win the game convincingly, and then you can be taken serious. But you get beat by the Browns, man, I'll be disappointed. Let's just say that. And this game, it doesn't shape up to be a Tomlin special. I know there's a bunch of you out there, myself included, that believe, hey, Tomlin specials are a real thing. This one doesn't shape up to be that way. The game in Cleveland did show up to be that way. It's shaped to be, okay, this is a Tomlin special. We're on the road 4 days later. We're terrible on Thursday night on divisional road games, and we just beat the Ravens in a tough game. It had all the makings of an upset. This one doesn't have that. Steelers got to go win this football game, and I think they will. I think the score is 27-17. I like the Steelers to win. I like for them to be more physical, get after them early. Again, on offense, aggressive early. Don't come out with this conservative attack like we've done so many times. Last week was perfect. Be aggressive. If that means, I know we want to run the football, and we should want to run the football. But if it means we got to throw it early to set up the run later and wear them out, then by all means, do that. Don't sit back and just play into their hands and be conservative. And, don't score touchdowns in the red zone. We did a real good job last week of scoring touchdowns because the red zone had been issues. Now it isn't. Now it's not. Okay, well, at least for that game, it wasn't. Let's do the same type of stuff. Aggression. The Steelers are much better when they're being aggressive. I think the offensive line has turned a corner. Hopefully we can do that again because, again, the Browns have a good defensive line. Hopefully we can continue to turn the corner as far as that is concerned. Getting more receivers involved, letting Russ cook. Russ was cooking his ass off against the Bengals. Let him do some more of that. And then go out on defense and play rock solid defense. Force Jameis Winston to pass. Shut off what they're trying to do running the football. Don't let them have anything running the football. Catch the ball when Jameis throws it to you because you know he's going to do it. He's at least going to throw you one, more than likely two. Just catch it when he does. We do that, the Steelers will be okay. I like them, like I mentioned, 27-17. Good, solid victory at home over the Cleveland Browns, man. So I appreciate all you all out there. Thank you for all of your support. Steelers Almighty, we're still growing, and it's all because of you guys. We're still moving. Remember, 15 minutes after the game, well, let me start here. 45 minutes before the game, we're going to be here live talking about this game. Make sure you come in, join in wherever you're at. And then 15 minutes after the game, we're going to be talking about a Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me know your rant, question, comments, all that good stuff. We appreciate you guys, man. Thank you guys for showing up and showing out. We love you. Aloha.